just stopped this whole haphazard way of living, and I took every decision, and I put it through this screen. What's the decision I'm actually making? What are the options? And what are the consequences of those options in 10 minutes, 10 months, and 10 years? I called this idea just so I could get through the day, 10, 10, 10. And I started using it that afternoon. I mean, I went right to work, and I got back to the United States. I was sitting at my desk not very long afterwards. That morning, I had promised the kids I'd be home for dinner. Kids, this is an easy day at work. I'm going to be home. We'll watch Malcolm in the Middle together. We'll do this together. We're going to read together. It's going to be a great night, just the 5 of us. You can count on me being home. Well, around 6 o'clock, my boss comes into my cube, and she said to me, we've had a disaster in the production facility in Tennessee, and I need you to stay late. I had a special skill. We don't need this skill anymore in publishing and coding. And she said, I need you to stay late and recode the magazine so we can publish in Kentucky. And I said, really? How late? I'm dying to stay late. How late? And she said, oh, really late, like 11 o'clock. We'll get dinner. So what I would have done before 10, 10, 10 is I would have said, sure, no problem. Would have called my sister, begged my sister to go over to my house. I would have called the kids, and I would have said, Mommy's going to be home just for a brief dinner. I would have actually driven home at very, very fast, and I would have spent some time with them, driven back, and then, I would have done this whirling dervish deal. Sort of like bringing your kids to Hawaii, right? But instead, I stopped. I said, okay, 2 options here. Stay and do the work, or tell my boss I'm not available. In 10 minutes, it was going to be a bomb. Either way, in 10 minutes, somebody was going to be mad at me. I had to own it. Someone was going to be mad. In 10 months, this was a different picture, because in 10 months, you can make it up to kids. I was an editor. I could work at night. There were weekends. In 10 months, you can actually sort of make up one missed night with children. In 10 months, I might be up for that promotion I so desperately wanted. And this may be different in Finland, but I'll tell you right now, in the United States, lack of availability is the kiss of death. And if you're a working single mom, which I was at that point, it's really the kiss of death. She's not available. She's not available. And then I thought, well, in 10 years, I'm probably going to have the career that I was meant to have anyway, because 10 years, a lot of things happen. And in 10 years, with a divorce and everything else in my life, all 4 of my children will be in therapy, and this is not going to be the deciding factor. So I thought, okay, I am going to stay here. I'm going to call my kids. I'm going to explain it to them. I'm going to explain to them with this exact 10-10-10 methodology. And then I'm going to stay. And I'm going to stay without guilt. And that's what I did. And you know what? Everyone lived just fine. The world didn't end, and the kids weren't that mad, and I was able to make it up to them. And I thought, this idea really works. And so I kept using it. And I didn't talk about it all that much. I just used it. But a lot of people noticed, gee, Suzy, you sort of calmed down, and things are better. And I actually eventually did get promoted to editor, and they told me that they liked the way I made decisions. And everything. I started owning all my decisions using 10-10-10. Well, let's fast forward. Life goes on. I leave the Harvard Business Review, and I end up working for Oprah Winfrey's magazine, O. And I wrote about work-life balance. Ended up writing about this idea. And little did I know that this idea would come to help a lot of people. And it was a very successful idea, and it sort of started something of a small movement of people adopting this, not just working mothers like myself, but a lot of people, men, women, single people, people whose children had grown. And I got so many stories back from people about how 10-10 had helped them make their lives more deliberate. But then I also started getting people asking me one question over and over again. And the question was this: why does it work so well? It's just a device. And it sounds pretty simple when I just explained it up here, right? It's just a simple device. Why does it work so well? Why were all these people telling me, you saved my life, you saved my... why was I getting this sort of incredible, intense feedback? So I had to stop and ask myself, well, why does it work so well? And suddenly I realized I know why it works so well. 10-10-10 works so well because it forces you, if you're using it right, to come to terms with what really matters to you. You can use it just as a device. You can sit here in this audience right now, maybe some of you are doing it, 10-10-10ing some decision you've got. But let me tell you how to turn that little strategy into something that will change and transform how you live. And that is if you attach your values to it. If you can come to terms with and get transparent about and admit to yourself what your values are, what you really care about, who you really are, what really matters to you. If you can do that and then do 10-10-10, oh my God, that's when it's transformative. Okay? So let's talk about that just for a minute. Let's talk about what it takes to know what you care about, to know what your value, to know what your personal values are. I think today and in last night, in Jack's session, and throughout the whole conference, you've heard the word values used a lot, about corporate values, corporate culture, values. But I'm talking about your personal values now. I'm talking about who you really are inside. Because I can tell you, when you're living by your values, you're living an authentic life. And when you're living an authentic life, you're happy. Because there is no such thing as a happy, phony life. There's no such thing as a happy, phony life. Once you're living by your values, really making your decision according to your values, that's when you have the chance for happiness. Authenticity equals happiness. So what 10-10-10 does is it takes you to a place where you, here are my values, here's what I'm really all about, and then you start making decisions with it. Okay, well, how do I know my values? I've heard that question 100 times. Sometimes you just know them. Some of you have known your values since you were little. Some of you are living by your spouse's values or your parents' values. Some of you don't know what your values, struggling to know what your values are. So what I want to leave you with today are 3 questions that I've used over the past 10 years to help people identify their values. And if you can answer these 3 questions, you are so much closer to knowing what your values are. And then I would say take these answers to these questions and try a 10-10-10, because together that's the combination. That's the combination that gets you away from a room in Hawaii with your children running down the hallway screaming your name. Let's just talk about the first question. Fast forward to your 75th birthday. I always stop here because one time Jack and I were in Hawaii and I was in Florida, and I was giving a speech, and Florida has a lot of retirees, and I had to say, fast forward to your 95th birthday. All right, so fast forward to your 75th birthday. What would make you cry from regret? What would make you cry from regret at that event? I have heard every kind of answer to this question. I've heard that I never reconciled with my daughter. That I never beat that demon alcohol, that I wrecked the family company. I've heard everything. People have legacy issues that there are unsettled in their hearts. These are, what would make you cry at your 75th birthday? So, usually people really think a lot before they answer this question. I've done this question in workshops, and people sit there, and you see their eyes sort of go like this. And they're thinking. But one time I did this with a friend I'd known for a long time. He was having huge troubles in his life. Very, very unhappy. And in fact, when I graduated from college, he was the most likely to succeed. And here we were 20 years later. He was miserably unhappy. He said, okay, fine, I give up. Let's do your 10-10-10 thing. I said, Bob, we have to start right at the beginning. Let's start with your values. What would make you cry at your 75th birthday? Instant answer. No pause. Oh my God, that's easy. The knowledge that my obituary would not appear on the front page of the New York Times. Who cares about that? Is there anybody? I hope I'm not offending anybody. I don't actually care where my obituary appears. So he really instantly knew. What was his value? What is that? If your biggest concern about what you would be crying about at your 75th birthday is that you're not going to be famous. Fame really mattered to him. And it's an interesting question. And it really was immediately almost very revealing about why he was so unhappy. Why? Because at the time he was working as a lobbyist in Washington. And if you're a lobbyist in Washington and you have an obituary on the front page of the New York Times, it means you've been in jail. So he was in the wrong field. He was working in a job where actually being very unknown was incredibly important. But really what mattered to him, now before he sounds like a total jerk, I want to add that he came from a well-known family. His father was famous, and I think there were identity issues wrapped up in that, so he wasn't a terrible person. But I will tell you this, his values were revealed in that question. So ask yourself, what would make you cry at your 75th birthday? What does it say about the legacy you want to leave behind? The second question is, what do you want people to say about you when you're not in the room? This is about character. Is it some of the answers I've heard before? That I'm kind, that I'm smart, that I'm rich, that I raised good children in terrible circumstances. I mean, I've heard so many different answers to this. It's about what you want to be known for with your character when nobody is making it up to your face. I had a friend, she had an amazing life. She was a showgirl in Las Vegas. She had a child with a guy who was probably something of a gangster. It didn't work out. She raised the child on her own. She went on. She had sort of this amazing life, and the child went off to college, and we were doing a 10-10-10 together, and I said to her, Lee, what do you want people saying about you when you're not around? And she said, oh, Suzy, I don't give a damn. And she was a person who just didn't care. That's a huge knowledge about yourself when it comes to your values. I've seen people make decisions based on what people in their social groups are saying about them, but they don't really want to live by those people's rules. So you have to ask yourself, what is it that you want to be known for in your character? Are you living by it? Or are you making decisions not based on that? Do you want to know being kind and candid, and you're not kind and candid at all? Third question, last question. What did you love about your childhood, and what did you not love or hate about your childhood? This is a lifestyle question. And a lot of people love certain things about their childhood, and they hate certain things about their childhood, and they repeat them all. And it's your choice, actually, just to repeat the stuff that you loved. And yet so many people have secrets in their family, and they had that when they were young, and then they continue it. And so I ask you to put that question also in the mix. So these 3 questions before you do 10-10-10. What would make you cry at your 75th birthday? What do you want people to say about you when you're not there? What did you love about your upbringing, and what didn't you love? And are you letting go of the stuff you didn't love and living a life of decisions that put you doing the stuff you do that you did love? Are you creating the kind of lifestyle that you want? And then you take these 10-10-10, these values, and you feed them into your 10-10-10 decision. And you get these more authentic, more deliberate decisions. Now, caveat, I'm not saying that life doesn't happen and things don't happen to us that are out of our control. I mean, I am tomorrow, by the way, 54 years old, and I know well enough that terrible things happen in your life that you have no control over. Somebody gets sick, you lose somebody that you love, you lose a job, you get fired, a kid goes off the rails. All those things happen. I'm not discounting that, but I'm going to make the case to you, and hope that you give it a chance. The case that we actually can control so many more decisions than we give ourselves credit for, and that it actually begins with this shift in mindset. This shift in mindset that instead of reacting to events and having reactive mindset with decisions, that we own our decisions. And we think about our values, and we put those together, and we have a lifestyle, an authentic life. Because as I said, there is no such thing as a happy, phony life, and you can be as successful as you want in business, and so many of you are. And just by being here, you show your thirst to be successful in business. But it all starts with where you are, centered as a human being. I think the way into that, the way into sort of building that foundation of authenticity is with your decisions, and I invite you to try 10-10-10.